So 5 years ago today, I started calisthenics. Pretty crazy to think it's been 5 years. I would never have thought in my wildest dreams that I would be a calisthenics coach 5 years down the track and running my own successful business solely around calisthenics and amass 250,000 followers across Instagram and TikTok. So it's pretty crazy and wild to think that's actually happened. Last month I fractured my finger and I thought I'd come to Bali, live here for a couple months and get through my recovery. And to be honest, it's given me a lot of time to reflect and look over my last 5 years of training. And I was getting super frustrated about all the mistakes I was making, as there's just so many things that you don't know in your first, second, or even third year that you do fast forward an extra 5 years. And I'm gonna be honest, if I knew exactly what I knew now, I would have genuinely been twice as far as where I am now. So if you wanna half the time and accelerate your progress, follow these 10 things that I wish I knew earlier. And these things I see so commonly with beginners and especially new clients that come on board with me. So follow the next 10 tips and you'll be a weapon in no time. So let's get stuck into it. Tip number 10. So I'm starting with probably the most common one that I see. I would say 95% of people who start calisthenics, when they get on board, they're just trying different things. They go to the gym, they're like, oh, I'm gonna try to do some elbow levers, I'm gonna try to do some handstands here and there. But you need to be following some form of structure. Hey. Morning, boss, how are you? Good? Yep. Doing well. You need to be walking into the gym and knowing exactly what you're gonna do and sticking to that set of structures. If you don't have a plan, you're kind of jumping around, you're not building strength specific to where you're trying to get to, and you're completely compromising your progress. So if you're thinking, Matt, I don't know how to write a program, what should I follow? These next 9 tips are going to show you exactly how to follow a program, what's gonna be best suited to where you're at and where you're trying to get to. As I truly do believe programming is one of the most important aspects of calisthenics and something that 95% of people get wrong. So get that notepad out, let's get stuck into it. So number 9, I'd say this one's probably just as common as the previous one, but you're trying to learn too many different skills at once. I completely understand when you get into calisthenics, there's just so much variety. There's all these different skills you can learn: the human flag, planche, elbow lever, handstand push-ups. And don't worry, you will have time to tick all those off eventually. But as I mentioned, you need to come up with a plan and focus on a set few skills. I tend to recommend doing 1 to 2 push and 1 to 2 pull focus skills and throwing in handstands around that practice as well. That way you're building the foundations and building that push and pull strength as well as the balance and control. You can also throw in one of those core focus skills too, like some hanging leg raises or some L-sit. Obviously, this is more or less once you've built up those foundations as well. So continue focusing on those foundations, those chest dips, those push-ups, pull-ups and rows. This is probably without a doubt the biggest thing that compromised my growth at the start. I saw calisthenics as the most exciting thing ever, so I tried to do absolutely everything, but it completely compromised my growth. Unfortunately, we're capped at the amount of volume that we can handle just because we don't have the energy and the resources, especially if you're only training 3 days a week and you're doing other things as well. So be smart with the energy, prioritize the right skills that are going to help you in the long run, and that's without a doubt probably the smartest thing you can do. I should probably fucking put this away. These streets are fucking pretty dangerous, to be honest. Literally, as soon as I turned my camera off, my bike completely shut itself. So I had to walk her back here. So it looks like we're walking to the beach spot where I train at, but at least it gives me a bit of extra time to talk to you guys through this next step because it is fucking important. So tip number 8. This is one that's a little bit more left field and a lot of people don't understand the importance of it as well. And it's recovery. And by recovery, I don't mean doing ice baths, saunas, red light therapy, all that shit. Most of them actually do work and they're great. I tend to do a lot of it. I love my ice baths and saunas. But what I mean by recovery is 7 to 8 hours of sleep and minimizing your overall stress levels. And obviously a pretty good diet as well. So in terms of high quality sleep, I'd be really focusing on trying to wind down at the end of the day, not spending too much time on your phone, not eating late at night. I try not to consume any calories 3 hours before bed, no liquids 2 hours before bed, and then I switch off my screens an hour before bed. Doesn't always work out like that, but I tend to try and incorporate that into my routine. And if you guys follow Andrew Huberman, getting sunlight in your eyes first thing in the morning, especially during sunrise, is super important. So I always try and go for a walk in the morning or just get that sunlight into my eyes. Managing stress, whatever works for you. whether you just want to go for a walk, gratefulness, breath work, meditation, whatever you find's best for you. It can be some light activity, going for runs, that works too. And then obviously in terms of diet, I really just focus on whole foods, getting your protein intake in, fruits, veggies, eating simple ingredients. I reckon that's the best thing for you. Still enjoy yourself, but 80% of the time, eat the good foods, 20% of the time, enjoy yourself. Throughout all of this, minimizing alcohol intake's probably gonna be pretty good, and that's probably the one thing that completely stuffed my progress up as well. My recovery was mostly whiskey and cokes on a Saturday night, staying up till 6 AM. So the lack of sleep, the stress involved with the hangovers, all of the alcohol intake itself, definitely not smart for recovery. So be smart about it. Don't do what I did for the good part of my early 20s, where I just completely obliterated myself. It's pretty bad habits, and you make poor decisions as well, so I don't advise it. So if you're thinking, Matt, you're gonna start talking about calisthenics, yes, these next 7 tips are without a doubt the most important things ever. If you follow these next 7 tips, you will be an absolute machine. Tip number 7. This is one that I would probably recommend to absolutely anyone in any aspect of their life, but from a calisthenics perspective, it is super important for multiple reasons. So this is to write goals. This includes long-term goals and stuff that you want to get to, and I think everyone has a good idea about their long-term goals, usually like getting a full planche or a front lever pull-ups, one-arm pull-ups, all of that stuff. But you want to be setting short and mid-term goals, both so you can actually understand how to write your program and make sure your program is going to be helping you tick off those short and mid-term goals. But it also helps from a motivation and kind of that gratification perspective, just because you're ticking off objectives and ticking off goals all the way through your journey, and that's what keeps you training and motivated to continue smashing your training. Because if your goals are just to get a full planche, you're not going to be ticking off much along the way if you're only focusing on that, and you're pretty much just going to be going around in circles as it may be taking 3-4 years if you're at a complete beginner level. But along that journey, there's a tuck planche, advanced tuck planche, banded shuttle planches. There's a lot of things that you can tick off along the way, and that's what you should be focusing on. Also, obviously, it's going to help align with your program. So, write goals in all aspects of your life, but definitely calisthenics. So, tip number 6. This is one pretty sure absolutely everyone hones in on, and I think most of you would know this will, if you clicked on this video, you'd know this would be one of them. However, I do have to hone in on it, even though I do believe a lot of creators overemphasize the need for it. So tip number 6 is to master the basics. So I think everyone knows how important this is. Everyone knows you need to build the foundations, get to a point where you can do a certain amount of pull-ups. You've got that strength so you can start working on skills. And you might be thinking, Matt, then why have you put it at number 6 if it's not that important? That's because there's 2 parts of why it's important. One, building the foundation is obviously essential. You need to do it. You need to have those core skills and core levels of strength before you start working on some skills. But you do not need to get to 25 pull-ups and 30 chest dips and 50 push-ups or whatever ridiculous number that some people have set. Getting to a point where you can do more than 10 or 15 pull-ups or chest dips is building endurance and size, yes, but you can probably build size any rep range between 5 and 30. So getting to the point where you can do over 10 or 15 pull-ups or chest dips is building endurance and not going to help you building strength. So what I advise is getting to a point where you can do 10 pull-ups and 10 chest dips, and then start incorporating harder variations where you're doing side-to-side pull-ups, some muscle-up variations. Weighted chest dips and weighted pull-ups are great too. I really cannot find where this gym was that I trained at. While I'm looking for this gym, I really hope it's here. I'll let you know that the next 5 tips, I know I've probably said this a million times as they're all pretty important, but these next 5 tips are probably the biggest reasons why you are not progressing at the rate you should. And for me personally, they were absolutely crucial. As soon as I started adopting these, my strength skyrocketed. And I cannot emphasize this enough. All of the tips are super important, but these next 5, I reckon, are going to be the biggest limiting factor for you. So making sure, get your notepads out and make sure you understand these next 5. Alrighty, so it is, some of it is still here. There's only 3 pull-up bars. It definitely had a lot more last time, but at least we can do a bit of a workout, so we're happy here. So the previous tip definitely led me to this point, but the next tip is to program for strength. And you're probably thinking, mate, you've already said this, but programming for strength is probably something that you may not understand how to do. What programming for strength means is the correct rest periods, making sure you're resting 3, even 4, 5 minutes between sets. You want to practically rest as much as you can. Obviously 8 minutes isn't advantageous. You'll spend 3 hours doing a session. So what I generally recommend is getting to that 3-minute mark. In terms of rep range, somewhere in between 1 and 10, depending on how beginner you are at the exercise and what your goals are specifically. But anywhere from that 1 to 10 is pretty good. If you really wanted to focus on strength, rep ranges between 1 to 4 is probably going to be pretty good. If you're wanting to build a balance of strength and conditioning, maybe a bit of size, somewhere around 5 to 10 is going to be a pretty good mark too. In terms of your holds, your isometric holds, obviously that's a little bit different. We're not doing reps. I tend to recommend from a strength perspective, if you're quite experienced with the exercise, 3 to 6 seconds holds are probably pretty good. If you're less experienced and you're just new to this exercise, you're learning a little bit about the form, somewhere between 4 and 8 seconds and 5 and 10 seconds is pretty good. The 2 next things are probably going to be the most important thing from a strength perspective as well. One is training frequency. You need to be training these exercises and skills that you're trying to focus on for multiple sets, multiple times a week. Especially the key focuses, you need to be doing it at the start of your session when you're the most fresh as well. So frequency and volume is absolutely huge. And the next one I'll cover in a tip a little bit later on, as it's probably the most important thing and something that I got wrong pretty much until about 6 months ago, as I just had way too much of an ego and I really honestly couldn't help myself. Anyway, let's get stuck into this session, eh? Bro, do you have any cold drinks? Cold drinks? Yeah. You got cold coconuts? Coconut. Yeah. Australia. Thank you, brother. Legend.
I don't have chance, bro.
That's alright.
You can take later.
No, you take. It's good.
Thank you so much.
Terima kasih.
What's your name?
I'm Matt.
Matt?
I'll shake your hand. Come here, what's your name?
Gado, bro.
Gandu.
Gado. Nice to meet you,
bro. All the best.
Thank you so much, yeah?
Enjoy, boys. Oh, Jesus Christ. So, tip number 4. So, getting into calisthenics, people want either one of 2 things. They want to do crazy shit, build insane level of strength, do some crazy advanced skills like the planche and the front lever. Or 2, and you can obviously have a goal for both of these, is look good. So how do you build aesthetics with calisthenics? There's a bit of a misconception here. People think that when you train calisthenics, you just naturally turn into these elite athletes who are just incredibly lean, good muscle mass, super aesthetic. It doesn't happen overnight. And if you want me to be honest, 95% of it is diet. Sure, training is important. You want to be doing exercises that are compound in nature and take the muscles through a large range of motion. You're training with intensity. You're being consistent with that over time. It's super important, whether you're doing weight training or calisthenics or any type of training. I really do think there's not a huge difference in comparing calisthenics and weight training. As long as the exercises are done correctly and you're choosing exercises that take the muscle through a large range of motion and push to failure, I don't think there's that much of a difference personally. Unless you're trying to step on stage, that extra 5% difference where you can have machine work that really isolates certain muscle fibers and muscle groups, they're going to be a little bit more optimal. But for the most people, it's pretty much irrelevant. What separates a good physique and a bad physique in calisthenics, weight training, anything? Obviously genetics is a component, but your diet. If you want to be putting on muscle mass, you're going to have to go through at least a light calorie surplus, potentially maintenance if you're already holding a little bit of fat, but you have to be dieting for your goals. Get a lot of protein intake in. Whole foods is obviously super important, as we spoke about, but eat the right calories based on what your goals are. If you want to try and build muscle, eat a light calorie surplus. You can use MyFitnessPal, calculate all of that. If you feel like you need to lose weight and you need to get leaner, obviously be in a calorie deficit. I wouldn't stress too much about the training per se. Continue building your foundations, develop those skills, use exercises that are compound and take the muscle through a large range of motion. You can do some isolated exercises here and there too, but focus on your diet to achieve that desirable physique that you want. And obviously it takes years to build that stuff. So once you're building your strength, a lot of the time the lean muscle mass will show as well. So that covers the look good aspect of do crazy shit. The next 3 tips are going to help you do some fucking crazy shit. So number 3, something that I think people who come from a little bit more of a weight training background, or they've come from playing a lot of sport, this is probably what they're doing wrong. I reckon probably 95% of their training session. And I'd probably say majority of these people are males as well. Males tend to have a little bit more of an ego. I don't know if this comes across as sexist or not. Oh, Jesus. But from a strength perspective, you should not be pushing your sets to failure. That probably hurts you a bit. And if you're trying to build muscle, sometimes going to failure can probably be a little bit advantageous, although the research is a bit up in the air about that. But what the research is very evident in is that when you push sets to failure, 1, you don't build as much strength, even when the same volume is equated, but 2, you can actually get more volume in and you're completing the exercises with better form and better technique. So it is a win-win when you do not go to failure from a pure strength perspective. So I know this may hurt the ego, but you need to be bringing it down a bit. In terms of your intensity, you need to understand what RPE or RIR is. I'm gonna put a table here, but all it is a measure of intensity, and you need to make sure the majority of your training is somewhere between the 7 and 9. Every now and then, it's gonna be great to do that 10 RPE, see where you're at with certain skills, test where you're at, obviously fuel the ego a little bit. But if 90% of your training is at that, you're completely stuffed. It should be the other way. 90% of your training should be done at that 7, 8, 9 out of 10 intensity. And maybe at the start of your session, try a new skill. If you're feeling really fresh, go for that max effort. But train smart, and I promise you, your strength will absolutely skyrocket. Taken from me, it was the biggest limiting factor. I promise you, definitely probably along with the next one, it was the biggest limiting factor for sure. And to be honest with you, it probably still is. My ego is absolutely checked, and I've got to really bring it back every single session. Coming from a weight training background, I loved absolutely pushing myself and absolutely cooking myself on each set. So it's a work in progress, but that is so important, and I can't emphasize this enough. Anyway, without further ado, what do you guys reckon tip 2 and 1 is? Obviously the 2 most important. We'll see. So tip number 2, and it's something that really stunted my growth, particularly with more skill type stuff like front levers and planches. It's something that I think a lot of beginners get wrong as well. Well, without a doubt, beginners, intermediates, and advanced probably. And what you should be doing is become a form Nazi. And what I mean by that is 90% of your training, you need to be honing in and ensuring everything you do is perfect form. The reason why I'm saying 90 and not 10% is every now and then it's really good to kind of push yourself, really test your limits, and obviously your form may break down a little bit there, but that's okay. It's good to test yourself and all that stuff, but making sure 90% of your volume is done with perfect form. What's happened with me, and this is probably one of the biggest things that stuffed me up, particularly with planche as well, I was smashing planches at the start of and probably in the first year, and I was doing everything with a retracted scapula, poor hip positioning, and what I've done is I've built strength in that incorrect movement pattern. So now I can full planche for 10 seconds, but the form is horrendous and it's pretty much not even a full planche, so I won't even claim it. So what I've had to do is regress down multiple levels and start building my strength back up at that more beginner and intermediate level, simply because I've been doing it wrong for so long. It's hard to build out of those bad habits that you make, especially from a beginner level. So making sure you don't make the same mistake I did, perfect your form, build strength in that specific area and those specific movement patterns, and 2-3 years down the track, you will love yourself, because those skills are going to become so much more natural to you because you've embedded those nervous system movement patterns into your brain, and it becomes a whole lot more natural. And you can see now, even my shuttle planche isn't as good, but you can see me when I do it with a band, how much better does that look? And if I just started from a beginner level, honing in that scap retraction, the better hip position, I would be years ahead with the planche. And it was a big reason why I completely stopped training it for the most part of 3 years. I was just so inconsistent with it. I was doing a lot more bodybuilding simply because I just couldn't be bothered trying to fix it. So all I did was pretty much focus on handstand push-ups and chest dips and bench press and incline machine press, just simply because I could not be bothered trying to fix it. And only to the start of the year is when I actually said, all right, I need to get this full planche. I'm a calisthenics coach. I need to be able to full planche. So please don't make the same mistake I did, because I hate myself for it. All right, so it's too hot. It's time for a swim, and let's chat about that number one tip. Whew. Fuck me, Bali's hot. 28 degrees, 80% humidity. So tip number one is something that I didn't really know the importance of, but only once I realized the impact that it actually has was when I realized that, holy shit, this is so important from more of a motivational, a drive and a consistency perspective. Helps keep you accountable, and it makes training and learning everything that you're trying to learn so infectious. The number one tip that I would give myself if I first started, or any beginner, is to find a community in calisthenics. I was super fortunate that in my third year or maybe fourth year, I found some friends that also did calisthenics, and that was absolutely awesome. But it wasn't until when I moved to the Gold Coast when I realized that, holy shit, a community has the greatest impact on absolutely everything. Not only from the general perspective of wanting to train more, wanting to train with better intensity, being more infectious, and loving the sport in general, but you learn so much and you get feedback instantly, and it just makes training a whole lot more enjoyable. And you may be thinking, Butters, I can't fly to Gold Coast and there's no one else that does calisthenics, or I only know a handful full of people who do. Online communities serve the same purpose and can be just as good, if not even better sometimes, as you're able to get tutorials and get consistent feedback and chat a whole lot more frequently. By the time you're watching this, I may have an online community set up. I'm in the works of doing it, but if I don't, there's plenty online that you can find. So to sum up the 10 points, find people you want to train with, train smart, train for strength, and probably most of all is enjoy it and be consistent with it. When I was going through training, I'd jump in between a lot of weight training stuff, throwing around random calisthenics sessions, in and out of training, especially when COVID was happening and there were lockdowns all the time. I'd be spending a month doing calisthenics and then a month doing weight training, and especially when I was doing calisthenics, I was just doing random shit. So train smart, train for strength, remove your ego, and mostly obviously you just enjoy the process. Hope you've got a lot out of this. Really appreciate the support. If you've come this far, leave a comment, let me know how the video went. Obviously my first YouTube video, so bear with me, but I appreciate the support nonetheless, and good luck on your journey. Have a good one.